On Monday, we learned about, was it Friday? What did we, am I also confused? Maybe I am. So we learned about Juneberry. What is time anymore? I'm forgetting everything all the time. I guess maybe I'm wrong. But Juneberry, we learned about recently, Friday or Monday, and I wanted to kind of move on that same trend by talking about a particular something that's related to Juneberry, but most people don't ever think about it or know about it, and it's really important for us to learn about it because it's becoming more and more common. So I'm going to show you our first picture of the day, and I want to see how you all react to it, and then tell me what you think is going on when you see this picture. So you can just raise your hands or unmute yourself. I can't, there you go, I can see all of you now. So Jaden, what do you think's happening here?
It looks like a pine tree that, like a toy you might find in a dollar store, started sprawling out of it, and then somebody sprinkled some dye on it.
So it looks like a toy you might find at the dollar store.
Yeah, like attached to the tree and then started acting gross.
Yeah. So does anybody else have any thoughts about what this looks like or what it made you think about? Liv, let's try you again. Try to unmute yourself. Keep trying. Maybe you should try the calling back in, out and in again or something. All right, I think Elijah, you had your hand up.
I think it looks like, what is it called? I forget what it's called. It's like a squishy. When you squeeze it, a bunch of like hair comes out of it.
Yeah, one of those things, one of those weird squishy toys that like explodes, kind of.
Yeah.
Baron, what do you think?
I think it reminds me kind of an oak gall that just started sprouting out little things.
Yeah. That's a good one. We'll definitely come back to that. Ileana.
It kind of looks like an octopus with a bunch of tentacles, and it also kind of looks like a sea urchin.
Like a sea urchin or tentacles coming out, like 100 tentacles coming out of an octopus. Yeah. Liv, let's try you again. Unmute yourself. Bummer. If you want to keep trying, or you can just keep trying to mute and unmute yourself, or you can put things in the chat. So this crazy thing that you're looking at is a living thing. It's a living being, and it is very much related to the Juneberry or the serviceberry that we learned about a couple days ago, because this living being needs trees like the Juneberry in order to survive. So even though it looks like what does it look like it's growing on or that it's attached to? Jaden.
Maybe like a pine tree. Did it like acidic soil, maybe?
So it's not, see, that's actually a really great question. I haven't been able to figure out how much it's related to acidic soil, but this is related to evergreen trees. So you're right. You are right about that. And most of the time, those evergreens large quantities, large amounts of evergreen trees often are in acidic soil, or they create acidic soil. So let's see if Liv said, is it like a monkey ball or something? So yeah, it's like got this crazy thing going on. Everybody has, it looks like some people say it looks like Medusa's head. If you guys know about the Medusa story, it's crazy. So it is actually a fungus. So this is not, it's not a mushroom, but it's very, it's not like one of the mushrooms that we've learned about already, but it is a fungus, and it lives and it has a life cycle that's very similar to the mushrooms that we have talked about. So what it's called is, it's got this like funny, awesome Latin name that I'm going to share with you. And there are a bunch of different kinds of this, but they're all very closely related. So this is Gymnosporangium. Gymnosporangium is the name of the genus of fungus that this is a part of. And there are at least 20 different kinds, but they all pretty much look the same. Unless you were like a scientist with a microscope and all sorts of crazy information, you would probably look at them and think that they were all maybe the same thing. But they are often called, people often most often call these rusts. So I'm going to show you another picture, and then I want you to tell me a little bit, I want you to tell me in your own words why you think it is called rust. Do one more share. Oops. Sorry, I lost my pictures. I'm gonna go with this picture, and all right. So this is a picture of June berries, but there's something wrong with them. So who wants to tell me why this might be referred to as rust? Baron.
Because it almost makes the berries look like they're rusty.
Yeah, so the rustiness is like maybe the orange color. Maybe. Yeah, so they're the orange, like, and anybody else have an answer they want to give that's different? Elijah?
I think it looks like little freckles.
Sure. Yeah, this one does look a little bit like freckles.
Like
what?
Or like pimples or something.
Yeah, it's definitely like there's something very wrong with this fruit, right? You wouldn't want to eat it, right? It's like really kind of weird looking. So this part is this is a fungus that needs two very different species of plant in order to survive. And that is because it's a parasite. So does anybody want to talk to me about what a parasite is? Any ideas? Okay, Elijah?
It's like a parasite is something that infects like things, like some animals that can affect like animals, and it can make them sick.
Sure.
And it can kill them.
Yeah, so it's something that in this case, it isn't necessarily something that kills the trees, but this particular type of fungus needs a host. It needs two different hosts. So host meaning something that it needs to grow on and live off of in order to survive. It needs not just one, but two different species in order to go through its entire life cycle and stay alive. So it's often referred to as has, the most common that I've heard of is, the most common that I've heard of is cedar-apple rust. So that it's a very easy name that tells you that it needs the cedar and the apple in order to survive. But most of the time, like I said, there are 20 different kinds of this fungus, and they infect all sorts of different species that are related to cedar and related to apple. So plants that are, can we stop drawing on the whiteboard? Boop. So plants that are related, does anybody want to tell me things that they can think of that are related to apples, maybe that we've talked about? Anybody have an idea? Liv also said in the chat, it looks like it spreads and takes over the Juneberry, which is exactly what it does. All right, so I'm going to give you some other types of species. The apple is in the Rosaceae family, or the rose family. So rose family plants are affected. And then there's another family that is generally referred to as the juniper family. So juniper family are the juniper are the evergreen, the pine trees, and a lot of people call them cedars. And the rose family is the other family, and inside the rose family is apple, pear, juneberry, hawthorn, quince, and these are all things that maybe you have never heard of before, but they're all fruits. They're all like fruit trees or fruit shrubs. And then roses, of course, rose bushes are affected by this. So there are a lot of different things that we eat that we really love that are really very yummy, that can be very easily affected. And I'm going to show you a couple more pictures so that you can see a little bit more about what it looks like, and we can, do people have questions? You want me to show some pictures and then we can do a little bit of discussion around like what we're seeing and how it works? Liv says, is it bad for us? It is not bad for us. It's not something that can hurt us or like infect us. It's just something that infects our trees. It infects things in our gardens that we're probably interested in eating the fruit from. So it can, if it gets really, really bad, here, I'll show you a picture of when it can get really bad. This is a photo of a juniper tree, this is an eastern cedar tree that is completely covered in these things. That's crazy. I've never seen anything like it. But this is when like it's gotten completely out of hand. This is like a giant full-grown tree that's just covered in this fungus. It doesn't usually get that bad because people are, I think, most often paying attention and trying to keep it from getting like that. But at this point, it's possible that this much of an infection could really hurt this tree because it's initially feeding off of like the twigs of this cedar tree. I have tons of cedars in the woods all around my house. These eastern red cedars. There's one across the street from my house, and I have cedar Juneberry rust. So my Juneberry tree is affected by it, and there's a juniper tree right across the street that also has it. So it's not bad for us, but it is bad for trees. It can get pretty bad. So I want to show you all these pictures because it's something that you're probably going to come in contact with, like wherever you live. There's different species that affect the West Coast, like where Barron is. There's species that affect like those of us, like I said, I have it like 20 feet from where I'm standing right now, where I'm sitting right now, I have it. And you all will probably see something like this. So at the beginning, one of the things in addition to like the dollar store toys and like the squeezy toys and all that stuff, the like Medusa's head and the octopus that we talked about, Barron said it looks like an oak gall. So that is true. So a gall, I'm going to show you a picture of what this looks like before it gets all those crazy Medusa or like octopus tentacles. When it's on the juniper, it looks like this. So this is before, see all these little like circle dot things that pop out are where those Medusa tentacles pop out of. This is referred to as a gall, which is spelled G-A-L-L. And all sorts of different plants can get galls on them of varying kinds, and sometimes insects create galls, and sometimes fungus creates them. Sometimes it's like a stress response that a tree can create, and sometimes. Jaden, do you have a comment? Oh. And Elijah asks, can you eat it? I would not eat it. I don't know that it would necessarily hurt you, but I wouldn't try to eat the whole thing. But this is what it looks like generally in the early spring, before now. So at this point in the spring where things are starting to like warm up, and when it's getting wet and we're having all these like April showers bring May flowers and that sort of thing, in all of the wet conditions that we have in early spring, and I'm sure Barron where you are, I know it's wet probably way more often than it is even here where we are, and it's wet where I am a lot too. So this fungus really loves wet conditions. It thrives and it spreads itself through wind, and through it gets healthier and stays alive when it's really wet. So let's see if I can pull up another picture. Yeah, Barron, you have a question?
I'm pretty sure I have seen it actually.
Yeah. They're pretty common, and if it's possible that if you've seen something like that on an evergreen tree, on some sort of like, because you might think it's a pine tree, but it might be a juniper, and you probably have a bunch of junipers out there. I know that there's really common in Oregon when I've been there. So I want to see. So this is a good photo of what. It's similar to the first photo that I showed you, but this is a picture of another one of those like Medusa balls that probably just got rained on. So this is like in its happiest, gooeyest state. And all of these like little crazy orange tentacles are actually the organism itself releasing spores. So does anybody want to tell me what spores are? We've talked about it in other mushroom related classes. Liv, let's see if we can get you to be able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, gotcha.
Yay! So I'm pretty sure that fungus use spores to reproduce and duplicate itself.
Say that. I lost the last part of what you said.
Duplicate itself.
So it's what they use to reproduce. That's what I heard. I heard that part. Cool. I can't hear you super well. You're kind of glitchy, but I did hear that it's what fungus uses to reproduce. So that's true. It's one of the ways that fungus reproduces. It's one of the most common ways. Eliana asked, is it poisonous? So it's not poisonous to humans. It's not harmful for us, and if we come anywhere near it, it's not going to hurt us. If we breathe it in, it's not going to hurt us. We don't want to eat it, but it's mostly poisonous. It's mostly like toxic to the plants that it infects. So if that makes sense. So the spores in this particular, well, let's call it a disease, because it's generally referred to as a plant disease. In this particular disease, it needs to go, so I showed you the picture of the Juneberries and what they look like when they're infected, and I'm going to show you what it does to some other parts of trees as well. So this is the top of a pear tree. The top of a pear tree leaf. And so when those crazy orange tentacles pop out and release their spores when it's wet and like the conditions are really great for fungus in the early spring, those tentacles pop out, they spread their spores on the wind. The spores land on a nearby tree. So maybe it's a pear tree, maybe it's a Juneberry tree, maybe it's an apple tree. Or a crabapple tree, and the spores land here, and if they continue to have good like wet conditions, rainy conditions, then they have the ability to take over. They basically like land on the leaf, and then they send out, does anybody remember the word hypha or hyphae? Does that sound familiar? Jaden, you have a question or comment?
Oh, sorry, I was already unmuted.
It's okay.
I was muted. I think where we are, I don't know what that is specifically, but I think in our area right now, it might like take over everything, because
You've seen
10 minutes ago.
You say it just snowed?
Yeah, like 10 minutes ago.
Well, snow is if it just snowed, that means it's too cold. So that's a good thing. So it needs like warm, wet conditions. I should have said that. So in like the early part of the spring, when temperatures are getting up into like the 60s, or like high 50s maybe, in my experience, from what I know about fungus, there's this really kind of like happy place where between like 65 degrees, let's say like 60 degrees and 80 degrees, fungus is like super happy. A lot of different species. So when it's wet and it's in that range of temperature, it's a lot is when it's going to be the hardest to control it. Yep. Oh, you're unmuted. Do you have another? Whoa! It's hot in your house. So we have here, here, you can hand her to me if you want. My baby just came home. So this is what they look like. And the word hypha, everybody say hi to Zia. So the word hypha or hyphae is when a spore will land and it will germinate like a seed and it will put out its roots, but instead of roots, they're called hyphae. So HYPHA is like one individual strand of mycelium. Does anybody remember what mycelium is? So it's all related. So it's a similar way of it reproduces in a similar way to other mushrooms, or mushrooms that we know about. So I'm going to show you some other pictures, and if people have questions, raise your hands or ask things in the chat. So that was a photo that I showed you of the top of a leaf. This is the bottom of a leaf. So after the, so does this look familiar to people, this photo? So I think that it's really easy to determine whether, so there are a lot of different diseases and a lot of different like fungi and a lot of different bugs that can infect plants, but this is very specific and it looks a lot like the other thing that I showed you, right? It looks a lot like that gall. It has the orange octopus tentacle looking things. So does it look familiar in terms of like, it looks like it belongs to the same fungus, right? So that's what I wanted to point out to you. If you see this on the bottom of leaves, and if you see that you have like evergreen trees nearby, it's very likely that that's your hosts, your two hosts. Let's see. Anybody have questions or things that like totally don't make sense about this? Any observations? Baron thinks that he's seen it before. Anybody else think that they've seen anything like this before or have questions related? Is it like confusing? Should I like keep trying to explain it? Do you think you understand what I'm saying? Mostly? Cool. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to show you some more. Try to show you some more pictures. Because this, like I said, you can find this on a bunch of different kinds of trees. So let's see here. This is what it looks like on an apple before it puts out the crazy tentacle looking things. So this down here in the bottom, this like circle that I'm outlining, that is before it gets really bad and shoots out its spores. So what would happen at this point is that it gets to, like when it's infected on one side, when the apple tree gets infected and then it shoots out those crazy Medusa tentacle things on the apple, then those spores will go and infect the evergreen tree or the juniper tree. And then it will just continue being in this cycle. So in order to control it, in order to like deal with this disease, you need to be able to find all of the trees, both of the trees. It's not just one. So it makes it a lot harder to manage. Elijah, did you have a question?
I went to an apple farm on my first day, and at the apple farm, on the apple trees, I saw that.
You saw that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very common, especially in our area. It's very common. A lot of times you'll see juniper trees planted right next to apple trees, or right next to pear trees, or like I told you, when I moved to my house, I didn't actually know that Juneberries could be infected by rust. So I wasn't really paying attention. And then I planted the tree, and wouldn't you know, directly across the street from it is its other host, is its juniper host. So that has made it a lot harder for me. It's going to be hard for me to get nice ripe fruit on my Juneberry. But there are some things that you can do naturally and organically to control it. Liv, you had a question?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's pretty glitchy, but just talk slow.
Okay. So you said, what do you do when you find it?
What should you do when you find it? Yeah, so the simplest thing to do when you find it is to just remove it. So when I have found the galls on juniper trees, I will cut them off. I'll like prune them off of the tree, and then I put them in the trash, because if they stay if they stay on my property, if I like put them in the compost bin or something, they would probably send out their spores anyway. So I remove them from the tree that I find them on, and then I put them in the trash. And the same goes for a Juneberry or an apple or a pear tree. If I see signs of rust on leaves or twigs or fruit, I remove them one by one. And then I take them, put them in the trash, and I wash my hands, because you can spread it to other trees or other leaves. If you get the spores on your hands, you're going to spread it to other things. So that's the easiest thing to do if you have like a very mild case. There is also, I have to learn a little bit more about exactly how to do it, but there are some people who spray baking soda, like a combination of baking soda and water and a little bit of oil, like a little bit of like cooking oil, vegetable oil, spray onto the leaves of their trees, which is also a pretty cool method of doing it. Apparently the baking soda kills it, I guess, or at least makes it so that the spores can't germinate. So that's like a preventative measure. There's another thing called neem oil, and I can put that on the whiteboard. I'll make a little text box here. We have a few minutes left. So it's good. The best things for prevention are good air circulation. So you don't want things to be super crowded. And then baking soda plus oil plus water, and I'll find a good explanation of that I can put on my website. And then there's this other thing called neem oil. Neem is from a particular type of tree. They extract the oil from it. It's really, really great for a lot of things in the garden, but it is a little bit, it can be a little bit pricey, but that's something that's often used for fungus. And then removing the fungus, I'll say removing diseased plant material from your home landscape. And then something else that's really important to know if you're watering a garden is that you want to water the soil, not the leaves. So if you're watering a tree and you like water the whole thing, the water, you actually need the water in the ground, not anywhere else. So if you're watering the leaves of a tree, it's not doing anything good for the plant, and it actually could be increasing the possibility that you could get a fungus on your tree. So water the ground, not the leaves. Does all that make sense? Jaden, you have a question?
Yeah, I feel like we wrote more on this whiteboard than we ever have in these classes.
Maybe. Yeah, sometimes I use it a lot and other times I don't use it that much at all.
It's like 2 words and then like that.
Yep. Other people have, I have it looks like 2 minutes left, or about a minute left. Anybody have another question? All right. So
45 words.
What?
45 words.
What word?
45 of those on the whiteboard. 45 words.
Oh, 45 words.
Counted.
Lots of words. Lots of words today. So I'll keep every once in a while, I'll talk about like a disease or like a pest insect or a beneficial insect every once in a while. Like, I think it would you guys like for me to do like, oh, today we're going to do pollinators, or like today we're going to talk about like a couple species of pollinators? today we're going to talk about something to look out for in your garden that could actually harm your plants, like that kind of thing. You want me to do that? I'll keep it related to what we're already learning. So tomorrow, Elijah wanted to learn about apples, and I think that I'm gonna we'll just move along this trend of Juneberry and cedar apple rust and stuff, and tomorrow I'll do apples, okay? So we'll talk about some cool apple things. All right, I'll see y'all tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.